So, good morning, everybody. For those tuning in, I do this every day so you see what someone who has released all her demons and how she acclimates. What do you mean release all the demons? Basically, release all the predisposed issues, all the trauma, all the damage the last 40 something years. I'm 49, I'll be 50 next February. So I want you to see what it's like for someone who is dealing with climate change, what they would have to go through. Because it took me 7 years to release the demons, and the bulk of releasing the demons, well, physically, the last 3 years, I released a lot of demons, which means that I had to deal with respiratory conditions, dermatological issues, headaches, extreme fatigue, extreme hunger, and dizziness, vertigo, all that stuff. So the last 3 years, I had to deal with physiological releasing the demons. But before that, like for about 4 years, around the J world, I was releasing a lot of intellectual demons. And I had to learn how to play the game according to my government. I learned how to play the game according to my peers. I learned how to play the game according to the world that I live in. And that was a huge learning curve. And that required a lot of I don't even say mistakes. That required a lot of just trial and error. That required a lot of my own personal experiments that then I shared with the world, and then it was done safely because nothing in the food supply is poison. And so we had to even uncover why people feel like food is poison, and that's because they have a hard time with evolution. Nothing is poison if it's FDA approved, but people have a hard time with change, with evolution. And so last night I went on to an IFL Science page, and they were asking, does evolution regress or go backwards or something like that? And I said evolution goes backwards and forwards, and then somebody else, of course, had to go and say, no, evolution doesn't go backwards, it only goes forwards. And then I put out a real loose example and said, like, well, when you are deteriorating, when you are thermodynamically compromised, which means you allow thermodynamics to control you as far as take you down to a single cell organism, that is like evolution going backwards. But then it's all relative, because to that person, that was evolution going forwards. And they just characterized deterioration like Alzheimer's or somebody getting old as just somebody losing substance, deteriorating, degrading, whatever you want to call it, dying of old age. But when you think about it, evolution is all relative to the standpoint that you come from. It's relative to the perspective. And so evolution has always been change. And so I just got off that page, or got off that thread, because I wasn't going to go back and forth and get mired into the debates. So I took my thought process and just tossed it around in my own head. And I'll read that later. But I had to go through of just understanding what evolution meant in the science world. And of course, evolution is based upon people dying and reproducing. And so they always say that evolution scientifically based upon the notion that people have to die someday, and that there's no such thing as immortality or negentropy. Okay, that's the opposite of entropy. And so they say that evolution cannot go backwards. But again, it's all relative. Because when you're a baby, right, and you're growing up, you learn how to walk, you learn how to run, you learn how to speak, you learn skills, you learn how to survive in the society that you're in. And then as you get older, as you lose substance and lose intelligence and lose intellectual capability, you are now regressing. You are now losing the evolution. Well, are you losing the evolution? See, people say evolution is advancement. But evolution actually means change, but there's different contexts of evolution. Because you have, the government says that there's a collective evolution of advancement of all humans. And the government is responsible for the collective, and then each individual person is responsible for whether or not they advance themselves or they regress. And since we are living in a society where mostly it's everyone dying and reproducing, then they have to advance people to a point where they teach their children up to a certain point of advancement based upon the collective needs, which is the government needs. Okay. And then that child will represent that advancement for that time until they start regressing. And then they hope that they have another child to pass on the advancement. But as we're seeing, since the government can't control reproduction the way they wanted to, or the way they thought they could, maybe, I don't know what their intention was. But now they're trying to guide reproduction carefully, because now we are bearing babies. They're not very advanced. They actually are way less than, and way less way less advanced than what they could be potentially, because of predisposed issues. And to get over those predisposed issues, a lot of pain and a lot of evolution, a lot of change has to happen. And not everybody is equipped to suffer through evolution when they're alive. They can only, what the government wants is people to evolve by dropping babies that are relatively healthy, that are in a society that's more evolved, so that way they can teach that baby the evolution, versus a person evolving when they're alive. And the pain of evolving, the pain of changing, the pain of taking on intelligence and substance won't be as great if they can just drop a kid and that kid is relatively healthy enough to take on the advancement of that society at the time. And so the whole J world saying like, hey, you can, if you have enough body, mind, and spirit. Because last night, when if I had weak bones and weak body, last night I slipped on a wet floor, and I could have broken an ankle, I could have broken a leg, I could have broken a hip, because of how hard I fell on the floor. Because I was messing around with my husband. I just mopped the floor. My husband was home and we were messing around for a second, and then I fell, and I'm like, holy shit. So I'm strong enough. Like, that was a test to see if I could survive something like falling in my own home. And I could, and nothing was broken. I don't even have a bruise. And so you want to have children and adults to be strong enough to fall on a floor just by doing something stupid, and not break a hip, and not break a leg, and not break a bone. Okay? You want to have people strong enough to be able to withstand things like that, just accidents. Okay? My husband's like, holy shit. He was like shocked that I fell that hard, because it was pretty hard. I mean, my ass was hurting for a minute, but I have no bruise on my ass or anything. And I looked at my knees, because actually what I did was I did the splits. Like I did, because it was so slippery that my legs went like this, and I fell and landed on my ass, but there was no rip in any of my muscles, and there was no tears, there was no sprains, there was no broken. I mean, I have been reinforcing my muscles, my bones, the last 7 years, but more so the last 3 years, because every single time the environment changed to such an extent, like it is right now, that people are feeling, I would feed it. And even the last, I would say 6 months, or whenever I started drinking the milk and eating the cream or drinking the cream, I have added more calcium and more minerals to my bones to reinforce the strength. So that way, when I do fall by mistake because of just stupidity or not paying attention, I won't have to suffer any breakages or suffer any tears or fall apart, which is why the elderly get osteoporosis, because they're not taking in the milk or the cream. Yeah, they take in Ensure, but that's not enough. What's Ensure? It's a type of drink supplement for the elderly that's made up of some calcium and some minerals and other stuff. But it's not a real replacement for the actual cream that's out there in the grocery store that you can drink by itself or put in with coffee. The elderly with osteoporosis are so calcium deficient, so milk deficient, so cream deficient, because they can't handle the life. The life is what is destroying them, because they can't handle the pain of releasing the damage and taking on the fat And so that's why I made a point that even in my pictures, when you see that I have collagen in my face, that no matter how many times I get sick through these evolutionary sequences of energy fluctuations, and I don't end up in the hospital or diagnosed with anything, but I will eat food, I will poop a lot, I will blow my nose a lot, I will sleep. But you'll notice that I will still keep the collagen. I will still keep the fat on my body. Actually, I have gained weight in this environment because I have to. But not the weight that is like obese or not calibrated. The weight that I have in my body is so proportional for what I have to deal with. I mean, I noticed a change in my chest. I noticed change in my thighs, in my calves, in my shoulders, and my my arms and all of that. And it is healthy healthy as far as balanced, because healthy means a lot of different things to different people. But I don't take any collagen supplements. I think the only thing that I use on my face after I take a shower is the CeraVe moisturizing lotion I get at Walmart, some drugstore lotion. I don't even use the natural oils. I don't need to use coconut oil or olive oil. I don't want to clog up all of my arteries and capillaries or my sweat glands on my face. But it's nice to have a little bit of moisturization after a shower. Okay? So eventually, when you guys get to a certain point, when you release all your demons, you'll be able to recalibrate to the environment, especially now because it's getting hotter. Even at my house at 69 degrees, which is cold when it's like 70 degrees outside, or 75 or 80 degrees, it's a little bit cold. In this 90-degree weather, 69 degrees is like hot one time and then cold one time, because it's either I freeze and I have to put the covers on, or I'm freaking sweating because it's still hot at 69 degrees, but I'm not changing it. I'm allowing my body to acclimate to this temperature and go through the fluctuations. And if I feel the growths, then I blow my nose. All right. So evolution. So this is evolution. Right now we are experiencing with this change, it's evolution, and it's extraordinary evolution. Some people will advance themselves. Other people are going to regress, and they're going to lose substance, lose intelligence, lose intellectual capability because they're not releasing the damage and they're not feeding their body. They're too afraid to feel the pain of evolution, of change. And they always want to be cured or under the influence. And so evolution has always been change. Advancement or reduction is all relative. What could be advancement for somebody else could be reduction to somebody else. If you were to look at the collective, evolution is advancing all of mankind. But some people would not evolve individually. So their reduction is actual evolution for the collective. So when people choose to pass away, they're actually evolving to, they're allowing the evolution for the collective. So if you're choosing to pass away and that is your belief system and you don't want to feel the pain of retention and pain of release, then your change of regressing down to a single-celled organism is going to be then the evolution for the collective, because now you'll be one less mouth to feed, one less resource we have to maintain, one less whatever. But then people are bringing in babies, but that even the babies, the amount of babies coming in relative to who's dying is not going to replace every single person passing away. All right. That's why there's going to be a major population decline in the first world because of all the climate change. And so individually you can advance or decline, and that's all relative. But the government looks at the collective. When they see more people in the collective regressing, then they realize that those that are causing regression need to be weeded out in a humane way. But we can't leave that up to mankind to determine who needs to be weeded out. So they change the environment, and they're saying, okay, you're either going to adapt to the changing environment, or you're going to find every way to squelch your adaptation, your evolution, your change, and try to stay cured and stay traditional and stay the same. And you can't do that according to thermodynamics, because that means that you will then be taken out by the environment. And that was already bred into you not to feel evolution, not to feel change, always to stay cured and feel the same and be traditional. And so, your belief systems are going to be held against you until you can learn how to evolve. So now the environment must dictate who must advance and who cannot. I've seen on my Facebook people going to the hospital. They're in so much pain. Oh no, I know what they're going through. I had hand pain last night. My left hand was like it felt like I had some kind of carpal tunnel for about maybe 5 minutes, less than that. And I've been sneezing but I don't have any respiratory issues. I don't have even feeling of bloating like I did a few weeks ago. I just sleep. I've been sleeping a lot more. Like I felt tired last night around 7:30, 8 o'clock. But I mean, the heat was like keeping me up and down. But for the most part, when I do go to sleep, I sleep like I'm dead to the world. And when I wake up, I'm just like alive to the world. Okay. And so it's a pretty extreme. So it means I get really good sleep when I need to. And then I can be awake just like that and be very coherent and right on point when I need to be. Okay. And so, yeah. So when it comes to the Constitution, now I'm going to do a hard transition. The Constitution is an evolutionary document. That's why all the amendments. So the Constitution is like the prototype. The Constitution is like the skeleton when you think about it, sort of. I don't even know how to say that. Yeah, it is. And the amendments are what keeps the Constitution in place. That's all like the apps, the body parts. But the Constitution is a living document. It is an evolving entity. And the UK has their own Constitution, or Britain, UK, and all the worlds that are coming up to the first world, they're going to have their own constitution, their own democracy, their own voting system. Okay, that's what the plan is for the New World Orders. Everyone has their own constitution that will evolve. And it'll be based upon a collective that will give people relative choice, but even then, those are still intellectual wars. But we want to get away from the physical wars. Though some people will go, like Afghanistan, they're going to have their own physical war because Afghanistan and even some parts of the Middle East will have their own really hard, traditional way of dealing with infidels and non-believers and China and all that. But when you're like in the first world, it's now going to be, or when you're getting up to the New World Order, where everyone's going to have a choice to be extremely civilized, or if they're not civilized as the first world, they're going to have their own laws and governments that the government will recognize, and we're not going to get involved and try to change the hearts and minds and turn people into first world if they don't want to be. And so they'll have to deal with whatever. Anyone that escapes from those places will then allow an asylum. But Africa is going to get up to that point where they're going to be voting in people. They're going online smart grids. And so those that get online in the smart grids, they're going to have a type of constitution with amendments and a voting system of sorts. And they will have intellectual wars versus the tribal wars. I mean, we're trying to breed out the caveman in people, but again, that's a process, okay? So now I'm going through my timeline because I don't want to miss anything and I want to cover everything because this is for my own development. So that way I understand why I come from a place, where I come from, and you guys understand where I'm coming from and why I'm coming from this specific standpoint. And the reason why America was developed to be this way, to be all about family and chasing after money and wealth and power and social capital and, stepping on people to get ahead and all that. And so now we're in such climate change that you got to look at, if you can afford to chase after money and collect baubles, and I mean that with your body and your mind and your spirit, you have enough body to you. Like my husband, I'll give you an example. My husband is built like a brick shit house. When I found him, he was skinny mini, but he had strong fucking bones. Strong bones because he had milk, meat, cheese, eggs, all that, raised in Ohio. And he was always landscaping and working with his muscles and was very adaptable. And so when I found him, then our relationship added more weight to him. So we had substance along with that frame, that really strong frame that he has. And so then he already had the intelligence, mechanical intelligence. So I knew that, of course, trucking would be a great thing. And trucking, you can make a good amount of money in doing that. I thought I could do it, but I really couldn't. But I was deficient in the body. And so I knew that I couldn't do what he could do as far as in this area. And of course, me trying to deal with my PMDD and trying to hold down a job was not going to happen. And so then realizing that he was the one that's going to be working, but he already had the infrastructure in his body to be able to handle going to work every day and doing what he does. And he has the smarts to carry that on, and he has the presentation and the loyalty and all that. So he's a great, company man, and he represents very well. And so he can afford his lifestyle, because I say, hey, do whatever you want, as long as you can afford it, as long as I'm fed and I have the internet, I don't care what you do. So he'll do what he does, and he does very well at it. And I do the best I can to advise him as far as just not taking too many medications if you do get through a pain and all that, to stay away from Tylenol and NyQuil and blow your nose and poop. And yeah, the last couple weeks I had to poop a lot. So did he. I'm glad he's doing that. And so he's gaining, and being around me, I'm advising on certain things. So he gains intelligence. And then I'm catching up to him as far as physically. I mean, I'm not going to try to be lifting a bunch of weights, but I am eating the meat, the milk, cheese, all that stuff, and catching up to him physically. Okay. And so I had to take a back seat to make money. I was at an insurance company working telemarketing, but I couldn't deal with the PMD, with that thing, with the telemarketing and stuff. And so I took a back seat and decided to write my book and figure out some shit on my own, and also help the world at the same time, and help my family and help myself and help the world and all that. And so, if we wanted to, well, here's the thing. You got to figure out who is going to be in a relationship. If one person is really strong, let them work, and then you build yourself up. And then when the roles change, then and you're stronger and the other person becomes weaker, then you allow them to then take a back seat in making the money, and let them recalibrate, and you do what you got to do and take your strength and use it. And so, and that's everyone's choice. Everyone wants to go and recalibrate. And so, but if I wanted to play that game of, okay, if we wanted to make a whole lot of money, then we both be working, and then what happens? Then the house goes to shit, and we're paying people to do stuff, but then we're working ourselves to death. And here's the thing, in this environment, you got to either work for yourself and maintain yourself, or you're going to give your blood, sweat, and tears to somebody else. And you're going to sacrifice yourself for somebody else. And so just because you make a lot of money, it does not mean it will convert into longevity. This is what I want to tell those that are really about money in the J world. It really isn't about money. It's making enough money so you can survive, and you have enough time off so you can deal with your shit. But I'm telling you, when you want to make a bunch of money, you can't convert that to longevity, because it's the time that you put to yourself is what's going to then increase your currency, your worth, and your longevity. And it's a balance. And so just because you make a lot of money, it does not mean it will convert into longevity. Now, I know that John's going to play both sides. He's going to work his ass off, which he does, and he's going to deal with these frequencies and take the time. And so that's why I want you guys to watch John. When John, he has everything set to friends, but those of you who are friends with John, watch him. He has a family, he has a good job, and he's very talented in his career and all that. And so he also understands the J world. And so he's going to balance out both those worlds and make money and also take the time. And he has the intelligence to do it. He also probably has a physiological capability to do it, because he understands what it takes. And so now it's just dealing with how aggressive these frequencies are. And so time for yourself converts to longevity when you feed and release responsibly. Okay? Responsibility. Obviously, making so much money does not equal longevity. You see the rich, they are aging out. So being rich does not mean the money is converting into immortality. Yeah, they can go and make inventions to capture someone's spirit in a computer box, and then you can transfer that spirit into some machine that will then be your husband or wife, or I guess, I don't know. But so being rich does not mean the money is converting into immortality. Okay, so immortality can mean different things to different people. Ray Kurzweil and the artificial intelligence world, immortality is keeping people's spirits in some type of electronic box. In the J world, immortality is the proteins. It's the fact that you're able to adapt to the environment, take on the substance, convert those proteins into something that works for you, and then be able to release the demons when need be. And you can survive aggressive environments, and you're not trying to stop the pain or remedy it away, or you're not advocating people die and age out in the system when you don't have to. Okay? And so being rich means you have taken your life and turned it into a gold. So Being rich means you have taken your life and turned it into gold, and you cannot eat gold. People turn into not only salt pillars, but also gold statues to be torn down later or melted down into something else. So that's in this world today. Being rich means you have taken your life and turned it into gold. And of course, you can't eat gold. And so people turn into not only salt pillars because they're doing so much J juice trying to cure themselves. Because they know J juice can be a curative effect. But remember how we learned how to pull the shit out of our ass, because that much cure will then stop your poop from leaving and you feel bloated, and then you got to pull it out. And so that's when we realized that when we transferred from the white salt, from the pink salt to the white salt, it was a faster cure. People were getting constipated faster. People were regular on the pink salt because the body learned how to deal with it, but they were still cured. But then the white salt was showing you how effective the white salt can be curing someone, but you don't want to be cured because that would mean you turn into a salt pillar. And that it goes against life. Okay? But also gold statues be torn down later or melted down into something else when the world has changed. And so that's why you're like, okay, how much is this money worth? Is it worth your life? That's what people are realizing now, is that you're working yourself to death. And that you're working yourself to death, and you can't transfer that wealth into longevity because you have to put the time. Not only you have to eat, but you have to take the time. What do you mean take the time? Well, you got to lay in bed, and you have to not only sleep, but relax. And sometimes when you're living that lifestyle of getting up every day at 4 a.m, every single day, and even when you feel like shit and you need to rest and release, but you don't because you don't have time because you have to get up at 4 o'clock a.m. every morning, can you make up for those times that you don't take care of yourself on the weekend? Well, if you have kids, if you have other responsibilities, when do you get the time to do that? Okay, so then you have to realize that, can you really afford to do the job that you're doing if you want to stay alive indefinitely? Can you really afford that? Can you really afford to be that greedy for money and social capital? That you're willing to sacrifice your body, your time to yourself? And yeah, it's going to be harder when you have kids and animals to take care of. Luckily, I only had an animal the times that I was feeling so shitty. And then my husband was mostly on the road, where I had 1 year where I had to deal with him every single day, cooking for him every single day because he was home every single night. Okay, so now that my dog's gone, and now that my husband is still, he's on the road, and he's home every so often, but I've got my power back. I have the freedom to take care of myself at the level that I want to and need to. I have the freedom to gain the intellectual capability and to look at the world and see the world for what it is. But yeah, when you are chasing after money and power and fame and wealth, and yeah, you have kids, that's going to be a hard thing to juggle. I mean, I give kudos to anyone that could survive this climate change because it's getting hotter. Oh, it's getting hotter. But are you surviving? Okay. Are you paving the way for it died suddenly? Can you guys actually look at your situation and look at your body, your mind, and your spirit, and look at what you're doing on a daily basis, what you're running away from, what you're using things for to take away the pain? Are you actually paving the way for it died suddenly someday? How much fat do you have on your body? How much adipose tissue do you think you have? What are you eating? What are you avoiding? What are you running away from? I mean, those are the questions you have to ask. And when you have kids, a family, and and I don't know, I mean, the thing is, some people can handle the juggling of all of that. I'm assuming. We'll see. We have until 2030. I'm going to say 2030. I will have my next book out in 2030. And so right now, I have this current book out right now, but my next book will be out in 2030, and I would have taken into account almost everything that needs to be taken into account. I will take all the notes that are on my website that I've shared with the world and on my Facebook and everything else, and I will compile that into some kind of organized story so you can see what lifestyle was forced down our throat under a slower frequency. And some of you have the chance to redirect and slow down your lifestyle because we're in a higher frequency. So you can save yourself. But again, we understand how addicting it is to get all this free energy and use it. But remember, Midas, he got so seduced by the gold. Everything touched turned to gold. There is no happiness in, really, when you think about it. I mean, there is, I guess, if that's what makes you happy. But when you think about longevity, I mean, I guess the government is giving people a gift by allowing them to die suddenly versus suffering from a disease that they choose not to deal with and redirect and stay home. So yeah, I guess so. In a lot of ways, I think the government probably is doing people a great service by having this environment be so aggressive that you will never have to suffer through change. It'll just be a died suddenly. And that'll save the suffering of your family, your friends, your kids. I mean, yeah, your kids will suffer from you being gone, but I think it's worse watching a loved one just suffer through a disease that they can't redirect because they don't have the capacity to do that or want to. And so a die suddenly actually is a gift to those that don't want to change. Okay? A die suddenly is. Because, yeah, when you are deteriorating and you are diagnosed with a disease that is taking you down notch by notch, where your abilities, you don't have the same abilities, and you're now just, yeah, you don't have the same abilities. Now you can't drive, or now you can't do this, now you can't do that, you're on light duty, or, that's suffering. I mean, people do deal with it. But when you get to a point where you can't even work, and you're not dying suddenly, you're just suffering from deterioration. Now you get dementia and Alzheimer's. That's suffering for people around you. A die suddenly would be a gift for a lot of people because they don't have to watch their friends and family deteriorate to that extent. It's like torture watching people deteriorate like that. It really is. It's torture not only the person, but also to the people around them. And so this is where now you have to examine, is your lifestyle going to cause a die suddenly? And are you willing to go through that process of suffering, of trying to get your life back? But how do you mean by my life is, yeah. Well, if you don't think that your life is gone because nothing has caused you to change anything, you're not going to realize that you need to suffer to release the demons and bring on, because you don't want to deal with the die suddenly. And you won't know, but you have, that's where intellectually understanding where die suddenly comes from. Because people are like, yeah, this person was a healthy person. They were great. They had a few issues, but it was manageable. And all of a sudden they're gone. They didn't know that they weren't expecting to die suddenly. They were not expecting it. That's what's scary. That's why you have to understand intellectually what it takes to live and what it takes to survive this environment. Because do you really want to pave that way for a died suddenly situation? I think my husband, when he feels the frequencies, he shits when he needs to. He eats when he needs to. Okay, he doesn't have any diagnosable conditions that I can think of, or even, no, he doesn't. Will he deteriorate if he doesn't turn things around? Absolutely. But right now he's just going through what he has to go through. Some people don't have my husband's structure, bone structure or body structure, and they are living off of fumes. They are a candidate for a died suddenly one day. Because again, when you have hardly any fat, you have already maybe a potentially diagnosable condition, and it's getting hotter, and the frequencies are becoming more aggressive. When do you think an aneurysm or a heart attack or a stroke will happen? When you have a rupturing of your arteries and capillaries, because you don't have enough of the adipose tissue to protect you from those electrical volts that you can't predict when they're going to come around. And yeah. So anyways, then I'm getting into the religious part, because I have people who are religious throwing scripture at me all the time, and I finally had to say, knock it off, guys, knock it off. So when you use JJ against your evolution symptoms, is no different than worshiping the golden calf or money, gold, wealth, status, staying cured. who was the pillar of salt in Sodom and Gomorrah. She was deemed unworthy to be saved and thus was turned to a pillar of salt. Another view in the Jewish exegesis, I don't know how to say it, exegesis of Genesis 19:26 is that when Lot's wife looked back, she turned to a pillar of salt upon the sight of God, descending to rain destruction upon Sodom and Gomorrah. So instead of just moving forward, she had to look back and see who was getting punished. She had to gloat, I guess. And so he turned her into a pillar of salt. So cured equals salt pillars equals no evolution. And so if you remember from back when the beginning of the J world, how a lot of the religious folks, whether it's the Hebrews, the Jehovah's Witnesses, or anyone else, and they're all about, yeah, salt. Are you worth your weight in salt? Salary, salt, this and that, just pumping up salt. And yeah, you need salt, but you don't need to be cured from salt. That's the thing, is there's always a point of too much. Not that it's deadly. Okay, it's deadly over time, no different than anything that's FDA approved. Over time, when you get an antibiotic resistance, then it could be deadly, because then the body will go into some kind of immunological response, and then you'll have to find a way to deal with it, feed it, or find another cure. And so that's why they take some of these drugs off the market, because you can't be cured, and or you don't want to deal with the evolution, and so then you have to find another drug. And so now you got to realize that the New Testament or any other offshoot when it comes to religion and food mitigation, people that don't like pork or like bacon or anything like that, I get it, but it's still food. You need the food. And I understand that religiously people are against it, but pumping salt up so much as if it was something biblical that you use, well, look at what happened in Genesis. That when you do so much of salt, you'll turn into a salt pillar. But that wasn't that wasn't really the real reason why people were upset at the J juice. It wasn't about turning people into salt pillars. It wasn't biblical way back in 2017, 2018. It was the fact that they thought that we were just eating salt with no water, and no one ever said don't drink water, but that's how people wanted to characterize it. But when you think about it, if they really wanted to turn it into an intellectual biblical conversation, they could have said, remember Lot's wife, when she looked back, she turned into a salt pillar? Okay, it meant that she was not bringing balance. She was still like those in Sodom and Gomorrah, going to extremes. Taking salt against your symptoms, or doing the J juice against your symptoms, is going to extremes. Doing anything against your symptoms of evolution is going to extremes. Okay, so cured equals salt pillars equals no evolution. You see, two can play that game, but only very occasionally will I throw scripture at people. However, people have been throwing scripture at me for at least 7 years, maybe 8 years coming up in October. And so here's a little taste of your own medicine. This is why I'm not religious, because most people cannot play both sides. Biased. And so then here, let me read this. Another Jewish legend says that because Lot's wife sinned with salt, which means she did too much or not enough, okay, she was punished with salt. On the night the two angels visited Lot, he requested that his wife prepare a feast for them. Not having any salt, Lot's wife asked her neighbors for some, which alerted them to the presence of their guest, resulting in the mob action that endangered Lot's family. Now, I don't know exactly what that was. There's probably more to that. I'm not going to go and rip that apart. But either she was punished with no salt, and so that's why when she did too much salt, then she took away the salt, and then that's the thing, is when you go to extremes. I salt my food. I don't really drink the J juice at all, actually, ever. But I salt my food, and I drink milk or eat cream, and I have a lot of cheese. I love cheese, and and sour cream and all that. And so I have a nice balanced intake of food. And so no, I don't abuse salt. I don't make it biblical. I don't make anything biblical or justify anything through any of the politics, religion, or science. There is salting out where you release the demons, And that's what happens in the beginning when people were doing the J juice. They get the waterfalls and they wake up their immune system, which why I got a lot of flack from people. They weren't prepared for that. But you can also salt in. What does that mean? You bring things together by not doing so much of salt. You put salt on your food. You eat the food. You drink water. You drink your milk and your cream. And you have a nice balanced intake and you deal with the symptoms without trying to remedy it away with anything. I don't care what it is, frequencies or whatever. And you deal with the pain, you sit with it, you release, you blow your nose, and you deal with everything that comes up. And so sitting with salt means you use it against evolution and change. You did so much of it that you could not evolve to release the demons. You became constipated, which is why milk and my internal manipulation method was born. But if you had a milk allergy, you had to transition onto milk slowly and learning my internal manipulation method to release yourself from the bondage of damaged cells. Okay? So people can sin with salt. And people are right now in the religious world, they are sinning with salt. They're doing so much of it to stop their evolution. And people are now realizing because their issues are coming back, the salt was not going to cure them forever. And so now they're back in the medical system using more of the medical or holistic remedies and or turning to more aggressive means. So sitting with salt means you use it against your evolution and change. You did so much of it, you could not evolve or release the demons. You became constipated, which was why milk and my internal manipulation method was born. But if you had a milk allergy, you had to transition onto milk slowly and then learn my internal manipulation method to release yourself from the bondage of the damaged cells. This is why I say the cream and the milk and my way of release outlined in my book will keep you whole among your God and eventually staying away from the medical, holistic, energy healing world. All right? And so, yeah, I could throw scripture just as well, but I'll use the Old Testament because that's what I was raised on. And then that's also the evolution. People don't like the Old Testament, so they go to the New Testament. So they're all about the New Testament. And they think the Old Testament's all satanic and shit because there is that dichotomy right now, the split in some of these politics. And that's where the anti-Semitism comes from, because people don't realize that you have to balance out both sides. And so that's why both sides are calling each other satanic or whatever. But the Rosicrucian is about understanding all sides, all religions, bring them all together and balancing both sides. Because you can use the Hermetics and the Jewish mystics and the Christian Gnostics to bring up evolution and to release the demons and balance up the population so we don't have all-out human extinction. When you bring up all the religions that all speak the same language with their own different characters, represent the same thing, you realize that you still need to balance out the positive and negative. Now, how do you want to explain the story around positive and negative? That's the religion, that's the politics, that's the science dogmas. It's the stories around the laws. Not so much the laws itself. The laws get lost in all the stories. And then when you want to learn the law, then you go to law school and learn the law the way that they want you to learn the laws. But no, when it comes to science and longevity and all that stuff, you learn the stories around the laws, and then you don't realize that there is a law for life and there's laws for death, and you have to understand how they work so that way you can save yourself, or else you will believe all the fucking stories be about love, 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 and all that shit. Because even people in the love, love, love world understand the laws and stop believing all the stories, but they're still falling into the oxytocin. That even the laws around death require so much love and devotion. Okay? And so then you realize you can still love something without trying to destroy it. But that's the thing, people take love to extreme and they use their love as destruction against their kids, against their friends and their family and everyone. And so that's where you have to understand the laws, not to believe all the stories, literally. But some people understand that from their agenda to promote love all over the fucking place. Okay? And so, yeah, I was watching yesterday, another, like a 1985 film with, oh gosh, whatever his name is, Tom Hanks. And so The Man with One Red Shoe, it's the government people going down rabbit holes from false information to purposely distract the enemy from their real intentions. That's what the whole movie was about, was feeding people wrong information and they're acting upon it. And it's like ridiculous. It's like a real ridiculous movie, but it actually is a lesson that when you feed somebody wrong information and you watch, what do you mean by wrong information? Well, information to distract you. So while something's going on over here, okay, like we hear people say this in the conspiracy world, oh, what are they distracting us from, right? So something's going on over here, and then somebody's getting fed information over here, so they're all over here on this information, and they're not even paying attention over here. And so that's what the man with one red shoe is the fact that they developed a story and a scapegoat to go and distract the government or people, whoever, and they go after going on wild goose chases and not realizing that that's just a wild goose chase. You know, Tom Hanks in that character was a wild goose chase. Everything that was fed, everything that was positioned to make him look like he was some part of some nefarious thing was a wild goose chase. And so that was like, oh, sounds familiar? When you're looking at all the different activism, wild goose chases activism, the chemtrails, the anti-GMO, the anti-V, the anti-this, the anti-that, fucking wild goose chase. So you're all distracted playing your games and you're still recommending each other antibiotics, whether it's natural or synthetic, okay? So you're not doing anything different, but you're like the man with one red shoe. You were given all this information so you can go and be distracted while the government's taking care of what they need to take care of. Yeah, there you go. 1985 was, I'll tell you, 1980s was integral in all this. And so I made a strawberry crisp. And it says futurist. Futurists predict humans will achieve immortality by 2030. And of course, they're mentioning Ray Kurzweil and the whole artificial intelligence. And so, J-World, you are up next. You have 6.5 years to prove yourself. I hope you can handle the major frequency shift because they will be aggressive. Once people discover immortality is possible, and I mean biological immortality, many will be pissed off. So if you can handle the next 7 years or 6.5 years, you got it made. They might mention artificial intelligence in the article, but immortality is more than just electronic. It's also biology. It's also the food supply. You need everything in the food supply. It's also your practices for or against evolution. You hold all the cards. Immortality is not looking like the Crypt Keeper, and it's not looking like you stepped off the pages of a magazine all the time, like you're ready to have sex right there and then, right? Immortality means you will fluctuate with the atmosphere. Every single time the atmosphere changes aggressively, you will deal with the aggressive changes, and you won't be using medicines or remedies to stop it. And some days you might look really crazy, other days you might look really well put together, and it just depends upon what's going on that day, that week, and what you are dealing with, and what you're releasing, and what you're taking on. And so you're not going to look the same every single day, and you're not going to feel the same every single day. Some days you might be tired, other days you might be really highly energetic, okay? But you will feel the heart palpitations. You will feed it. You will rest. You will realize that, yeah, maybe your lifestyle is what is causing the body to cannibalize itself. But people will not realize that because they don't want to feel anything, and they can't because they're under the influence of either some high frequency or drugs or alcohol or sex or whatever. And so they are a candidate for a diet suddenly because they don't have any indicators letting them know they need to fucking calm the shit down. But you can't tell them that because you can't tell them to feel pain if they don't want to. If they're under the influence over something, you can't tell them to get out from under the influence if it's legal. So immortality is a way of life, and it's not for everyone. Because even when the environment does slow down and you happen to be caught in an environmental situation, right, a change, even using a less aggressive remedy will inevitably cause you to use more aggressive remedies because you haven't conditioned yourself to change with the environment. And so, yeah, when I moved from California to Ohio, I was fucking sick. Oh, I was sick. But I knew this because I know later that was because of environmental change. So I had to get used to the new frequencies. Okay? And so if you can handle the environment today without turning to the medical or holistic system, you have it fucking made. If you can make it to 2030 without being diagnosed, you have it made. Even if you never use a medical system, if you're able to reverse the aging process and stay relatively stable, fluctuating, you have it made. And so you will never know what's going on with people. And that's why I'll say this. You're supposed to live indefinitely if you have access to food, shelter, and a strong immune system. There should be no reason why I would die suddenly. I have no heart conditions. I have no brain conditions. My liver and my vital organs are working extraordinarily well. I'm very well endowed. I have a lot of body to me, which means I have a lot of substance to do energy conversion. I can afford to fluctuate with this environment. I have reserves. And so when women finally realize that they're going to have to bring on the substance to be able to handle this environment and also release the demons, they're not going to be skinny. And they're not going to be too obese either. because it'll release those demons and bring on the substance and also be able to be proportional for their adaptation, for their survivability for that environment at the time that they're in. And so no food is poison. Nothing FDA approved is poison. And cancer will not happen because I can release the demons without using remedy surgeries or anything else. I don't hold a lot of damage within me, so cancer will never be the spirit to possess me. I released the damage the last 7 years, even more so the last 3 years. COVID-19 was the evolution. It was the frequencies. Every pandemic or sickness comes from a frequency. If it's in my book, if you can handle the process. Not everybody can. I am not naive to think I have the answer for everybody. And just because you can't do what I'm doing doesn't mean it can't be done. It just means you still project what you think is right based upon your world. So some people can do the J world, and some people can beat the fucking odds. And yeah, I beat the fucking odds. But I'll tell you, I suffered through it. And I suffered through it. And so then I posted a picture of myself yesterday. After being sick for a few weeks, I was sick, but I didn't seem like I was sick, right? I wasn't coughing. I wasn't like in the hospital. I wasn't just laid up in bed for days and days and days on end. I wasn't starving myself. I've had an appetite and I've been releasing demons, and I feel pain every so often, and my armpits open sometimes as far as the lymph nodes. So after being sick, and that was my version of sickness, a few weeks then in coming to a head July 4th, because where I had to sleep all day on July, I had to sleep. And so the sickness I experience is vastly different than what most of you experience. Why is that the case? Because I released my demons the last 7 years and most of the last 3 years. Now it's just recalibrating to the new environment. Every single time the season changes, even if it's just getting hotter, all I do is eat, poop. I only experience a few pains here and there, and very short-lived, if at all. And I also blow my nose. I feel the heat, I sleep, and then keep feeding my brain information. Everything I watch is a classroom to me. Every movie is something to learn from. Everything I read is connected to everything that's going on. I maintain pretty well. I will be 50 in February. Okay, so I don't want to put my age, like I'm 49 today, or whatever people think it's my birthday and say happy birthday. No, my birthday is in February. I will be 50 in February. All right? I use no remedies. And all I did was eat food and sleep and release the demons safely and effectively. Sometimes in the morning, I will look disheveled. Like right now, I might look a little disheveled. But then later on, during the day, everything comes together and everything looks even, right? And so sometimes in the morning, I will look disheveled and then everything evens out throughout the day. That's called fluctuation and evolving with the environment. See, if you don't do Facebook Lives and you don't look at, when you look at yourself in Facebook Lives on camera, and you're not like speaking to the camera, you're not going to notice the differences. Or you will. And you'll be like, dude, I need to do this, this, and that. People that don't like themselves, well, they can't look at themselves in the camera. They can't look at themselves over a long period of time, because when you look at yourself through the camera, through a lens, and when you're talking, it's a lot of exposure and a lot of disclosure. So that you're like, holy shit. And so if you don't ever have to look at yourself really through a camera, where other people can look at you and all that stuff, then you can live in the world of whatever you want to live in. But when you look through the camera, through the lens, and you're broadcasting and you're looking at yourself, then you got to face yourself. Like literally, you have to face yourself. And that's hard. It really is. And yesterday there were a few orbs, just 2 orbs. So the frequencies have changed. And one orb looked like it was just like a feather passing through, while another one was really quick. And so those are the sperms of the dead that found their way in, but I'm able to release them. And they weren't like swarming like they were a few months ago. Okay? And so, I would say if you really want to face yourself, get on camera, and you can do if you want to see, if you don't want people to see what you look like, you can change the settings so it shows only you, that you can only see you doing a Facebook Live. And you can do that. And look at your face. Look at everything. Look at your face every single day. Every single day. I mean, literally face yourself. And so that's why, those that are critics against me, that have no picture on their profile, they're under troll accounts. I'm like, what are you criticizing me if you can't even put your picture on your own Facebook? Because once you put your picture on your Facebook, then you're now left for everyone to make comments about, make assessments, make judgments. Oh, believe me, I've been subject to that for this whole time, and I'm fine with that. Okay? And so I'm brave enough to put my face out there. I'm brave enough to go through the fluctuations and know how to explain them and articulate why they happen. But when those that are criticizing me don't even put their face out there, some do, which is great, and they have their own explanation and good for them, but many don't, because they don't want to be held to that kind of accountability. That's a hard accountability, to face people making assessments and judgments and stories about what you look like and why you look the way you look. Now, let's see if we can all survive our lifestyle and belief system. It doesn't matter what you look like now at this point. But use it as a barometer to watch yourself change if you're in the J world. Okay? And so I have collagen in my face. Lack of collagen makes the face and skin look and feel saggy. And so when some women lose weight, so they don't look saggy, their face is drawn in, or they have so much fat in their face but no connectivity or collagen. That's where you get the jowls. When you have fat in your face and there's no collagen, that's where you get the real spongy, jowly face. Okay? And so, yeah, even in older men, when they're bigger and they have a lot more fat to them, but they don't have any collagen, that's where the jowls come from. All right? And so I have collagen in my face. So why is collagen necessary for longevity? It helps form connective tissue, a vital component of our skin, bones, muscles, tendons, and cartilage. That's your immune system. It's our body. If our body doesn't make enough collagen, these body parts lose elasticity and strength they need to function. And so when women age out in the system, okay, they try to do the facelifts and stretch the skin over. And that's why you see the stretchy look for those that get all the plastic surgery and even the Botox to fill in all the wrinkles and stuff. But then, over time, it's going to cause bacterial infections. It's going to cause then even a more of the aggressive immunological response that you can't get away from. And you probably can't come back from because it'd be so painful. And so that's why in the whole J world, if you get yourself before you get to that point, then you might have a chance. But I want to show you my face after every time I go through an energy frequency shift. So you know that I'm still keeping the collagen in my body. I feed my body the milk, the meat, the cheese, everything. I don't leave anything off the table. And I sleep and I rest and I release the demons safely and effectively and responsibly. And so, all right. So as far as human connection, okay, I see people on Facebook. This is where I'm like, yeah, I understand stuff. They're like, oh, people on Facebook, they don't have a life. When you're online, you don't have a life. I have a real life. I have people in my life. I go and hang out with people. That's the real human connection. Okay. So you hang out with people. All right. And do you think that's the best way to connect with people is in person? Well, maybe if you're in a homogenized world. I mean, if you are a person of color, would you walk into some place in the South in a bar that's mostly of people who are intolerant to people of color? You really think that's the best human connection in person? No, the reason why you are not online is because you have a very homogenized group in your world, in person, that you feel safe among to circulate within. Because obviously you would not go into a bad part of town when you know that maybe your face and your culture and everything would cause people to be intolerant and potentially even hurt you. And so those that say that they have a better life in person, yeah, because you're fucking homogenized. You have homogenous friends. You have a homogenous group, a safe group to circulate within because you don't want to change. You don't need to change, right? And so why is being virtual not safe for some people? Because there's a lot of diversity online. There's so much, more than you can fucking handle. And so then you reverse the situation and you realize that you can't handle the diversity online. And so you go back to the real world and be in your safe, homogenized circle of people and then denigrate diversity. It's like a reverse racism. Because obviously that person would not go into, again, a questionable area that would find his or her way of being tolerant. They would try to hurt it because it would be diversity that they can't handle. So there is no best human connection. There is no one way to connect with people. Connecting with people in person isn't always the best or the best way. And staying only on Facebook isn't the only way to connect with people. However, we're in a very dangerous time right now. People are coming out with their diverse ways of thinking, and people don't like it. People are wanting to change. People are that were in homogenized groups want to change, and it's dangerous for people to change. It's dangerous to let yourself go away from certain lifestyles and belief systems because people want them to be part of that. Okay? And so there are many ways to connect with people. If you think there's one way to connect with people, you might have an issue with connecting with people virtually or in person. And there are many reasons for that. Safety issues are one of the biggest issues. What would happen if you can connect with people in different ways safely? Maybe we need to start connecting with people virtually to get our differences out. People can realize they don't have to hate you for your differences. And then once everyone gets their differences out, they can hang out together, and those differences aren't a wedge. But at this point, we're so used to being homogenized. We're not used to hanging out in diverse company. That's the infancy of humanity. And so when you feel in your gut that hanging out in diverse company might be dangerous, yeah, you're going to want to be online and be virtual because it's safer that way. Because you see what happened to Bill Gates when he walks into a building and people are like, oh, Bill Gates is horrible. And then he has pie thrown in his face. People get injured by people all the time out there. Strangers come up to people just out of the blue. They don't like what they look like. They don't like what they, whatever, and they get hurt. People who have vendettas against other people from personal situations when you're caught somewhere exposed. Okay? You can't stop it when it happens because if you're not expecting it. And so then, punishment happens after the fact, but does the punishment fit the crime? Not usually. And so, at this point, we're so used to being homogenized, we're not used to hanging out in diverse company. That's the infancy of humanity. And so that's the thing, is that we now have to learn how to be diverse and take in new information and take in differences and not make those differences seem like it's a weapon or a threat against your lifestyle or belief system. Until humans can handle diversity, they can really only circulate on the internet or in person. Because again, if you can't handle the diversity on the internet, you got to be with your friends and your family that will only tell you the party line. And so they can really only circulate on the internet or in person relative to the homogenization they must feel safe in. And so the birth of the new world is when it's safe to be who you are in person and online, and no one wants to destroy you in body, mind, or spirit. So you see, we're still cavemen. We haven't grown up that much. Humans have a long way to go, and Africa has to catch up to us as far as the first world. And they are. Everyone's so focused on China and Russia, but Africa, you got to watch for it. They're the up and coming people. They are extremely strong and they are extremely intelligent. So while we're all worried about China and Russia, Africa is going to be your competition, first world. Africa is. And so humans have a long way to go, and Africa has to catch up to us, and they are. The third world has to catch up to us. We have to catch up to ourselves. Real lives are what you make of it. Fake lives, when you have to say your life is more real than somebody else's life. Everyone's life is real, and safety is a major issue with most of the world. At this point, some people are safer offline or online. Your way is not the only way, but your way is for you is the safest way right now until people mature. And right now, humans are not mature. If anything, they are so immature, you have to mention this. This post must exist because most humans are immature. And so for me, it's safer to be online than to circulate in diverse company because I can't fit in with California because all the academic liberals don't like evolution. They think they're the ones that should be developing evolution when they fucking don't because they're in a very homogenized society. And I'm here in Ohio, which is a lot of, there's left wing here, but a lot of right wing. and I'm coming from California, they think I'm all anti-American, unpatriotic, and represent something that's threatening their way of being. So then really online is the only really safest place for me, because there is no place out there that really understands where I'm coming from. And until they get used to my ideology, it might be safer for me being online than hanging out with people all the time. And it's not just because of what I think, but also my lifestyle is not so much of a hard charging lifestyle. I'm a very relaxed lifestyle. Okay? I really do. I don't need to drink. I don't need to do drugs. I don't need to do anything that most people do out there to let loose and relax or whatever. And so I'm a minority amongst most people. Again, I don't do drugs. I don't drink. I don't even smoke cigarettes anymore. I used to smoke cigarettes. I wasn't going to die from cancer. I knew I was eventually going to get off the cigarettes, but it wasn't my time. But I have not smoked a cigarette since the last time you saw me smoke a cigarette on Facebook. Okay? And so it might be safer for people to be for people to be online than in person, because that way they don't get caught up in the deadly traditions and the deadly lifestyles. And some people it's safer to be out there because the diversity on Facebook is too much for them. And for them to feel good about themselves, they have to say, well, my life is real in person. Okay. That means that you can't handle the diversity. And why is that? No one's going to hurt you on Facebook. See, people that don't want to be out there with people know what people are capable of. Know that harm does come to people that are different, that think differently. Okay? When you're in person, face to face with someone, and you're stuck in a situation, social situation where you can't get out of it for whatever reason, you got to deal with the bullshit. You got to deal with the friendly jabs, the friendly mockings, all that shit. But when you're online, you can just turn things off. But when you're out there in public, you can't just turn people off. You can't just tell them to shut up. I mean, you could. The only way you can do is walk away. But that's what I'm saying, is that it's probably easier and safer to be online than it is in person. Because in person, then it is a type of Darwinian type of thing. Microbially, physiologically, even physically. Oh, here we go. Okay, evolution. Evolution. What is evolution? Remember, evolution has stories around it. There's like so many definitions for evolution. There's the science context. There's the probably a theological context. There's so many contexts to evolution. Drink some coffee. People can die from evolution if they don't keep up the substance to support it. People can die from lack of evolution because they don't have what it takes to support it. Support it. What is it? The body. Because if you don't evolve and you stay unchanged, well, you're going to have to evolve. You'll be forced to evolve. And when you're forced to evolve, you could be evolving out of existence. Because evolution is change. It is thermodynamics. It's change. When a molecule is being added or subtracted, can you handle the energy that's being added to you? Can you handle the energy being subtracted from you? And it's all relative to how you balance out everything. And so evolution can go backwards and forwards. That's why you always must balance out the substance in your body and spirit and mind to handle the evolution in your environment. That's why you must understand thermodynamics will always work against you. That's why you have to keep feeding the energy. Feeding the energy. So you have to keep fucking feeding it, keeping up with the evolution, and make sure you have adequate release so it's not taxing your vital organs. All right? De-evolution is when you can't do the things you used to do. Evolution is not only you releasing the old world, but you're taking on substance to program yourself to the new world, the new environment. It could happen in 20 years as far as major evolution, or you could be evolving every day or every weekend relative to your environment. So when these frequencies change aggressively, some people are being forced to evolve every single day or every weekend. And some are getting diagnosed, or they're losing substance, or they're feeling so much pain, and they're going to be then treating it or getting operations or taking more aggressive remedies and surgeries and herbs and extracts and pills and powders and supplements and oncology, that they will eventually evolve themselves out of existence. That's why you must change when the environment changes. But people, they fucking hate to change, so they're sitting ducks. All right? Oops. And this is about fear. People are afraid of you, but you would never hurt them. But they're afraid of what you represent. So this is to do with even the LGBTQ, the drag queen shows, whatever. Which I understand because everything has been related to sex. And when you have a society built on sex, whether it's straight sex, gay sex, LGBT sex, transgender sex, everything is all about sex in our environment. So anyone that represents a different sexual orientation is going to be a threat to those with children who are impressionable, and people don't like change and they don't like their kids sexualized. But kids are sexualized through the porn industry because they're watching either, stuff on TV that parents are not monitoring them. And so, everyone's been sexualized at some point. Just what kind of sex people are having an issue with. And so people are afraid of you, but you would never hurt them, but they're afraid of what you represent. You might be too evolutionary for them because you certainly would never hurt them. But people see you as an evolution, and that is hurtful to them when they want to remain the same. And so even myself, I'm very evolutionary. I'm not all about sex. I'm not advocating everyone have straight sex all the time. I'm not advocating LGBTQ. I'm not advocating any kind of sex. I'm saying, you know what? Sex has actually been the bane of people's existence and the destruction of the family and the destruction of people when the focus is on so much sex and love and all of that it becomes something of a weapon versus a gift as far as the world and their children. And so, but again, if you're advocating even questioning all of that, then you are representing changed people that can't deal with change. So any kind of change to anyone, any kind of diversity is a threat to those that are very homogenized. All right. So you might be too evolutionary for them because you certainly would never hurt them. But people see you as an evolution, and that is hurtful to them when they want to remain the same, which is why when you finally want to change, like really want to change, people won't like you or they will tolerate you. Growing up and being mature is living past 100 and realizing evolution doesn't have to kill. Evolution doesn't have to hurt. Diversity is not dangerous. Your lack of tolerance is dangerous to diversity. But again, what are you advocating out there? And so we have developed so much shame and so much stuff around sexuality that has become a weapon in our society. And it was for a reason. Okay, the 1960s was integral in weaponizing love, sex, relationships, family, friends, politics, religion, science. That was the beginning of the fourth turning when you think about it. Because it was setting the stage for people to be at each other's throats when it came to sexuality and diversity. And so, but we had to take the conservatives and say, okay, there's going to be some kind of diversity. And just because it challenges your way of doing things doesn't mean it's going to hurt you. But again, how far do we take shoving diversity down people's throats? How far do you take it? And people take that shit far. They've taken a lot of their diversity very far to the point of where it turns into a weapon. And then you get the pushback. I'm married, but I don't flaunt, my husband and I are not we don't do public displays of affection. We're not all over each other in public. We're not all over each other on Facebook, take pictures, but we're not playing that game of oh yeah, look at us. We're a straight couple and we have sex. No, we're married in a business relationship that has sex occasionally. It's all part of it, but the sex is not it's not the first thing on the freaking list. All right. And so it's how far you want to take your lifestyle and how far you want to take shoving it down people's throats. Remember Footloose? Remember how conservative that town was until Kevin Bacon danced it into evolution? And so be the Kevin Bacon if you can in your world of homogenized clones. And so that's the J world. It's not only are we evolving ourselves away from those that oppressed the Puritans. Because remember, the King James Bible version was what the Puritans were running away from. And that's why they came to America. And now you're seeing most Americans read the King James Bible and they're oppressing their fellow man, oppressing them with their religion, the legalistic religion. Okay? And so now we have to realize that we have to become independent even from our own American peers, because they're acting like what England did to the Puritans. So everything does come full circle. And so, you know how hard evolution is? I have people arguing with me about evolution on a science page. Every single argument around evolution is credible. Just back it up with physics and chemistry. So I don't deal with people who have to argue with you around science all the time, because they don't have the maturity to understand every single argument is credible. Understand the laws. Don't believe all the fucked up stories. Understand the laws of physics, chemistry, and biology. And so evolution can go backwards and forwards. People think death is evolution. Well, again, remember, we look at the collective versus the individual. Maybe percentages of you, while you're filling the holes, is at the same time. The death of a person is not evolution to the person. It might be evolution to the collective, because that's one less person the collective has to feed and deal with taking resources. So yes, evolution can go forwards and backwards. And so I think I made my point. Evolution minus 1 is de-evolution. It's still evolution minus potential. Evolution plus 1 is more change. And that could be, it's called entropy, right? But then are you adding something to it during that process? Well, some people are not adding to their evolution, and so they turn into thermodynamics. They actually deteriorate and they age out and they die, because you're not adding anything and keeping retention of substance and intelligence and intellectual capability. So evolution plus 1 is more change. They say de-evolution does not exist from a scientific perspective, but you can move backwards. You can take on characteristics of something that was prior to your evolutionary leap. And so while science takes in thermodynamics and death of a culture, people can disintegrate down to a prototype that could be reminiscent of somebody in the caveman status. So that's evolution going backwards. Evolution is all based on the intention and outcome. You could be constantly trading so as long as you stay whole. But what are you trading up and what are you trading down? How far do you want to take advancement before too advanced, then you become dumb? Everything must be carefully balanced. And so yes, you can add in, subtract, and evolution can go backwards and forwards. Thermodynamically speaking, is the loss the only way to evolve? Only if you have so much more to gain. How do you measure loss to say you evolve when you gain at the same time? Humans were advanced at one point, but someone had to do a reset. So yes, evolution can go backwards and forwards, because advancement and diversity is all relative to where you came from. And so evolution can go backwards and forward relative to what perspective you come from. And when people die, they go into a single cell organism over millions of years called oil. Even their spirit isn't just one single cell. It's an energy captured in a particle riding the electronic jet stream. All evolution is just change. The characteristics that explain evolution comes from physics. Every argument is correct. Change into what? What kind of adjectives do you want to apply to the change? Technically, what the evolution is change, plus or minus. And it's plus or minus relative to your perspective, is what is being added and what is being subtracted. And then, of course, your story around it. The story around it isn't evolution. Evolution merely is a change to more advanced, complex organism that may not be fully understood. So even dying is evolution minus 1. And some people could describe that as more advanced. And some people will argue against that. Dying is not more advanced. Who's right in the matter? It doesn't matter. It's all and how you want to end up someday. But change is always inevitable, and evolution is necessary if you want to live in this terrestrial life. And so again, minus all the stories, okay, evolution is just change. What you change into, what you change from, it's all relative to where you are. So again, is dying an evolution? Not to the person, I mean, it is and it isn't, but to the collective, yes, that's a change of advancement. To the person, evolution, it will destroy them, and it's regressing, it's going backwards. But you have a choice now to advance yourself and become part of the collective that is strong, or you'll be one of those that are regressing, and you'll be evolution to the collective, because now you're one less person the collective has to deal with and figure out how to manage. Okay? And so now you are the one that's going to determine if evolution is going to be an advancement or a regression. But it will be as far as individually. No matter what, if you stay alive, you will be an advancement for the human population. If you stay alive continuously. Because in this environment, when you are regressing, you're not going to be regressing for a long time. It'll be a died suddenly. And some of you are paving that way for a died suddenly because you don't feel anything. You're under the influence. You are distracted up the yin yang. You're not changing. You're not feeling shit. And the food that you're eating is not doing anything for you because it's not adding anything to you. It's just keeping you maintained. But again, the environment is taking more from you than you're adding to it. That's the laws of thermodynamics. That's entropy. And so what's the J world? We are negentropy. We balance out both entropy and negentropy. And we're not looking at evolving the world by us dying. That's for those that can't evolve. And that's most of the population that will eventually pass away because of their lack of evolution. Their intolerance to change. That's why they can't have everybody in the world have the same frequencies, because they have somebody survive, right? And so bar evolution, evolution can go backwards or forwards. Everything is relative. So you have a bar and the bar is set. You can go above it or below it, but then there's a bar underneath that. And so, yeah, it's all relative to where you are as far as the evolution. Okay. And so every bar can be set to be really high or really low. And even in your community, a person who has like a 20 IQ can be really, really intellectual and advanced relative to the people that they're among. And so when someone has now like a 30 or 40 IQ in that population, they have set the bar higher. And someone has a 60 or 70 or 80, they set the bar higher. And then someone goes back to 20, now the bar is set lower. Okay? And so it's all relative. And so if anything, if you want to set the bar higher for yourself, then you have to advance yourself and stay alive and advance yourself relative to what you can handle, relative to your society, relative to whatever. And you don't have to be like me, but you can always beat what you have been. Maybe to you, evolution is getting off the drugs. Maybe to you, evolution is calming down your lifestyle so you can take the time for yourself and add substance and intelligence. But somebody else, it may be totally different. They may have to do other things to evolve. But look at your world. What can you evolve and what can you take on? What can you release so you can stay alive? Or else, yeah, you will be the evolution for the collective and you'll be one less person for us to deal with at your own hand. And your children will follow suit because they won't have anyone to show them. And so insurance companies leaving California. State Farm is gone out of California. Okay? Why skyrocketing insurance rates lead to lost coverage and no safety net. And so, yeah, I'm watching California Insider. Oh gosh, that's such a great channel to watch because you're watching California self-implode. The fires are destroying the fires are destroying the whole economy. The heat, the fires. Yeah, once all the insurance companies leave, the whole place will be just done. And so, yeah, I mean, if that isn't an indicator, Californians, I don't know what is. Okay? I don't know what is. But you know how people, they can't change. They won't. They got to stay the same. And so, yeah, the economy is going to force people to either make a change or die with that economy. That whatever. So I got that. All right. So what's my main takeaway today? My main takeaway today is you can evolve and you don't have to die and you don't have to be diagnosed and you don't have to suffer so much. That I'm now at a point of my evolution when the frequencies change and the climate changes that aggressively and the heat is the major change. It's not as painful, but you're going to have to do the work. You're going to have to go through the suffering of your own predisposed issues. And in climate change, most people can't handle the suffering. And so the gift will be the died suddenlies. And some of you feel that you don't have what it takes to really change. And so you are entertaining the die suddenly. And again, we thank you for your service. We appreciate whatever you've offered to us. But if you are alive now and you can analyze your lifestyle and your belief systems and analyze your body, your mind, and your spirit relative to my information, and you can juxtapose it against academia and the science world, then you have a choice now. But you keep putting off your analyzation of how you're going to evolve, yeah, you'll be died suddenly. And again, thank you for your service. The environment gave a gift to your family. They don't have to suffer through you going through a disease that you can't seem to want to manage. See, when you set yourself up to deal with disease, you will survive. When you just let disease happen, just out of nowhere, you either won't survive it or you will suffer your way out the door, and you'll take people down with you. And that's kind of what's going on. People are suffering so much, they're taking their friends and family down with them. Or people are not changing at all, and they're taking their friends down with them. So no matter what you do, if you can't set up evolution and longevity correctly, you will be taking everyone down with you. And that's kind of crazy. But it is what it is. All right. I'm going to go. Talk to you later. Bye.